This presentation is by Sarah Rhodes, Fort Hays State University, in course AEP 858, Literacy and the Reluctant Black Male. Fact: boys learn to read at a slower rate than girls. Fact: boys are less confident than girls regarding their reading abilities. Fact: boys read less than girls. Fact: boys express less motivation and enjoyment for reading than girls. Fact: by the time that they get to high school, 50% of boys don't consider themselves to be readers. Those facts were from the Reading Teacher Journal, the article Effective Approaches to Motivate and Engage Reluctant Boys in Literacy. And I chose this article simply because I found it to be in support of my case that I am making here today in this presentation about why there is an achievement gap in the black male student and what we can do about it, not only as classroom teachers, but also as a leader, and what we can do to go forward with the research that we know now. So this was one article that I found very interesting. I am a subscriber to the Reading Teacher. I absolutely love it. It was one of the best investments of my money that I made. I use the journals quite often and would look forward to maybe seeking out some other journals as well, like Psychology Today and so on. Psychology in the Schools. But anyway, very good journal. The research that I found in this article was that the language area in the brain differs between boys and girls. And simply put, the brain in a 3.5-year-old girl is the same as a boy at the age of 5 when thinking about language and literacy development. So there is a significant difference between a girl and a boy and how they learn and at what rate they learn. In this research that I read in this article, boys are required to do a lot more at their age than what their brains are developmentally ready to do. This was alarming to me because I feel like if we know this, and this is what research indicates, then why is it that we continue to push our boys and girls at the exact same rates and expect them to keep up? The article went on to say that a lot of this was because of all of the federal mandates in the at-stakes testing and that, or high-stakes testing like your state assessments and so on. So I found this to be really interesting that research doesn't always prove that these sorts of tests are necessarily the best for our children. Fact: there is an achievement gap between black males and their peers. Fact: many black males are wrongfully placed in special education programs. And in the black male, there are 3 dimensions of critical literacy that another journal article in the Reading Teacher went on to talk about. And when thinking about the black male and literacy, we often think about, according to this research, the 3 C's. The literacy should be culturally relevant. We should focus on collaboration and also the critical conversations that we're having about literature and literacy in the black male. Going back to culturally relevant texts, there was another article that I found that I will be talking about soon that basically says, hey, listen, if you do not have culturally relevant text, then you're missing the boat altogether. That this is the biggest indicator for change in bridging that achievement gap. And again, I'll go into that farther here in just a few minutes. Collaboration, of course, is huge because we need to be collaborating not only between the parents and teacher, but also the student, parent, teacher, and other staff members. We need to be a team and unite and work and come up with solutions that are best for the child and not leave the parent out. Usually, you know, if we do an IEP or something, usually we've already planned out what we're going to do as leaders to help this child succeed. But rarely do we ever include the parent in any kind of a say-so until the very end when they're there at the meeting to sign the papers. I think that that is a huge deficit as far as helping bridge that achievement gap, because if we're not getting the support at home, then really, we need to be taken back and look at that and decide if what we're doing is really correct. Because certainly having the support at home means all the difference in the world as far as what the child will do once they leave our school building every day. Also, critical conversations. We need to be talking about our literacy programs and really reflecting on them and looking at what we can do to change them, not only as teachers, but also as leaders. If we don't sit down as leaders in our buildings and talk about these kinds of issues, then I also believe that we are really negating some responsibilities that we have to those children. Critical conversations like, is our curriculum really working? Sometimes that's tough because we don't want to maybe sometimes admit that what we're doing is not good for our students, or maybe it was relevant at one time, but it's not any longer. A lot of the times we need to be talking to the curriculum designers, talking to the people that are in charge of our curriculum programs, like our curriculum directors. We need to be discussing these kinds of things with them too, to let them know that maybe what we're doing in the classroom right now really isn't working as well as our curriculum directors thought that it would, especially when we consider the black male and literacy. And I would, as a leader in my own classroom, I would bring these issues up to my curriculum director and show her the research and say, okay, what can we do to move forward? How can we make some changes here? And I got this information out of the Reading Teacher. Once again, I have this at home, and I found this article to be very helpful. It's called Combating the I Hate This Stupid Book. How many times have we heard that before, right? But this is even more important because this article focused on the black male in particular, and why is it that a black male is not being able to connect with the text like we would think that he would? Why is it that he is getting in so much trouble and getting referred to special education way over and above the amount that white males are? And furthermore, boys in general, why are we saying that maybe they should be referred to special education? The numbers of boys in special ed compared to girls are alarmingly high, and furthermore, black males enrolled in special education programs are significantly high as well, even more so than, like I said, than the white student. And this article definitely talks about that too. And I also chose the Educational Leadership Journal, and I looked at an article called Engaging the African American Male in Reading. This was very interesting to me too, because it went on to talk about, again, the same things that I was discussing earlier about the amounts of children in special ed that possibly don't need to be there simply because of the way that our curriculum is designed. But even more so, this particular article really focused on what we are doing as far as selecting our texts and having them be culturally relevant. The article went on to talk about how many times teachers do not have the professional development that they need or the experience that they need to really step outside themselves and look and see if what they are choosing is really indeed culturally relevant to the children in their classroom. It was a very interesting article. Research finds that curriculum must be meaningful and reflective of student experience. So many times, we base our curriculum and our text choice on white middle class values, and that's simply not the demographic of our classrooms any longer. And with this particular research cited in this journal article, it was very clear that what we are doing is not working. And it also gave some different information about what we can do to make changes and things to be aware of when it comes to children that are different than our own backgrounds. And the article also talked about the big missing piece, which was the role of the text in literacy development. And the article's author said that this piece is missing when we think about how we are teaching literacy to students and how students develop in their literacy and their language. It's just so much different now. You know, before we had so many books back in the 60s that really focused on black issues and so on. And according to this article, it seems like that is really diminished. And if you don't have a text or texts throughout your schooling that are relevant to your own experience, it's going to be very hard to even want to be interested in that book because, you know, why should you? If you don't even relate to what is going on in the majority of the text that the teacher is selecting, then there's a problem. There is a shift in literacy that needs to take place and does take place in very successful schools that have begun to bridge the achievement gap between white and black males. And the 4 basic literacy needs that this journal article highlighted were an academic, cultural, emotional, and social. Frederick Douglass was a very, very big man back in the 1800s, and he blames, or not blames, but credits most of his success and the way that he was able to carry on his very infamous life was through reading. He had a couple of books that were very inspirational to him that really enabled him to go on and do the courageous things that he was able to do for the black people as a whole. And so we consider books to be enabling or disabling, and Frederick Douglass certainly relied on a lot of enabling texts. Also, once again, as I was saying before, that back in the 1960s there were a great deal of enabling texts for the black population as a whole. And as you can see on my picture here, you know, a picture of these African Americans fighting for decent housing and just different civil rights that they didn't have. And you can thank so many of these wonderful authors for writing these books, enabling the black people to step up and start speaking out and have a voice and understand that their voice could be heard. That was all done through sharing literature with one another and with some really great pieces of literature. Again, an enabling text. Disabling, however, it seems like we, according to the article, ever since the 60s, it seems like the books that have been written anymore almost seem to focus more on skills and those sorts of things that students need to be tested on, rather than on actual empowering information that students really need to know in their lifetime. Of course, they need to know skills and so on for the big test, but at the same time, what are we really doing if we're not teaching these children about how to stay motivated and how to stand up for themselves and their rights and how to find different pieces of text that are actually relevant to them? If we don't teach them that kind of a love for reading and a drive to learn more about themselves, then what are we really doing? All we're doing is teaching these children to take and pass a test. And to me, there is a lot more to life than just that. These skills that they learn are great reading skills, but at the same time, if they don't have the desire or the motivation to read, what use are the skills? And finally, what implications do we have as leaders? What does the implications of the church give for us as leaders, whether it's in our classroom or leadership in the building? We need to be taking a better look and a closer look at our curriculum choices and also at the recess times that we're giving our students. We know that boys need a lot more time to burn off their excess energy. So we need to revisit that and check our schedules to see if there's any possible way we can open up a little bit more time for these boys. Also, we need to strongly consider looking at our professional development because, you know, if we as teachers and leaders are not privy to all of the latest research about gender research and boys in general and their black males as far as the achievement gap goes, then we are really hurting ourselves. And that achievement gap will never be met and bridged if we do not learn more about it. And then most importantly, the biggest thing is the text selection. We need to make sure that our text selection is relevant to the black male. Thank you.